This is Heroine Addiction, presented by That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster, where we cover romance and drama manhwa, and where you can always have a do-over if your life is a mess. I'm Isekai Sensei-sama, aka Brad, and as always, I'm joined by Bento Baggins, aka Ben.
Hello.
Be sure to find us on social media, which you can find links for on our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. So today we're covering The Villainess Flips the Script, which is also well known as It's Time to Change the Genre. I started reading this very early on in my career. It's been around for quite a while. And the official release, the official English release of this is quite far behind the Korean release.
Really?
Yeah. So I have always support the official release, but also spoiler alert, I love this series, and so I can't get enough of it. There's no way I'm waiting that long.
It's not my fault, guys. You just made it too good.
So yeah, anyways, there's basically two different names. They're different enough that, I wanted to point that out. So as always, I will read the summary, then we'll get into the discussion. I woke up inside my favorite novel, not as the protagonist, Luca Winterwald, but as Judith, his abusive aunt, and the first character to die. Time for a rewrite. I'll hand Luca off to his loving, long-lost uncle as scripted, and then live my own life far from danger. At least, that was the plan. When his uncle arrives, Luca suddenly calls out, "Don't leave!" Now I must protect Luca from an impending family tragedy, raise him to become the hero, and turn this villainess's ending upside down. So yeah, interesting summary. When I went back to read the summary, I was like, that's not really what's happening. Sort of like there's some discrepancies in there. I thought it was a weird summary, but that's the official summary. So
that's like maybe the first chapter or two.
And even then, like Luca is going, "Mom, you're my mom," and trying to like
trap her. Yeah.
The other interesting thing that I found, they talk a lot about the villainess. The name is The Villainess Flips the Script. Short of, the original Judith is like greedy and is trying to, use her position as being related to the ducal heir to like get money and clothes and jewelry and stuff. She doesn't really seem like much of a villainess.
Well, I thought the flip the script, change the genre thing was it's supposed to be a revenge story.
Yes, the original. So to get this out of the way, a Korean woman gets reincarnated as Judith in the story that she read, the classic Otome Isekai thing. And she's like, "Oh no, I'm this bad person, Judith. So I've got to, especially after Luca is like, 'No, this is my mom.' She's like, 'Well, in order to save all of us, I have to make this not a revenge story,' which is what the original was. But I will flip the script.
I'll make it a happy child rearing story because
Right.
that's a genre we have, and it's tough to explain to people who aren't into this.
Right. Wait, childcare is a genre? What the heck does that mean?
It's the fantasy of an adult person being reincarnated as a child and loved and taken care of. It's a uniquely millennial story.
It seems much more prevalent in certain Asian cultures. I wonder why.
Yeah, it's a. And
But
the weird
I just
thing is,
think
when you're reading them, you don't think about it. Like, it just makes sense. But
it makes me feel warm and fuzzy, even though I had a loving family growing up. I just thought it was weird how much, especially early on, they're sort of like focusing on she's a villainess and she's got to not be a villainess. It's like, you didn't really convince me that she was a villainess originally.
yeah, she doesn't seem to have a big role in the original story. She's just kind of the.
Well, she's the first one to die.
Yeah, she's the fairy tale, like wicked step parent. But then
Not
that's the
even,
beginning
though.
of Luca's story.
Like, she's obviously not a great person. But a little bit of spoilers. When we find out how she died in the original one, which is, 30, 40 chapters in, she was basically refusing to help the main protagonist. So even in the original book, she wasn't like entirely a villainess.
Yeah, she's not much of a villainess. And also the novel, I kind of like this, actually. It's one of my favorite things about this particular series. The novel she read becomes so rapidly, not irrelevant, but things change so drastically so fast that it's not one of those where she knows everything that's going to happen and needs to cleverly subvert it. The personalities have changed so much that, like, the drama between her and the other characters drives the story
Right.
more than this prescribed script she's following. She's flipping.
I'll put this out there. I think we're going to get really heavy into spoilers here. So I'll say that ahead of time. Anybody listening to this, you should read this series. It's so good. Spoiler alert, personal preference 5. Go read this if you don't want to get spoiled. Some of the reveals are pretty good, so I would recommend people read it and then come back and listen to me gush about it. One of the major things that is different is when they're, she gets dragged along instead of how it originally went, where she sort of followed along and is like trying to cajole people. She's actually sort of like given all of this stuff, even though she's trying to refuse things. So there's a very stark contrast between like how it worked originally and how it works now. How far did you get, Ben?
So I got, I think I got a decent way into season 2. I didn't start season 3. I got to, I guess if we're in spoiler territories already, Rudiger's confession.
Okay. So you didn't actually get to most of the fun stuff yet.
I was going to say, like, it's the first season is a real slow burn.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way.
It is a fairly easy read. So it's not like you'll be, slogging through it. But it's most of the stuff before, if you can call it a confession.
Yeah, it's very, I don't know. I like Rudiger. He's got a personality, and I don't know. I kind of like his weird, detached. He's the cold Duke of the North, I guess. He has black hair, if that matters, and he doesn't like people. He never connects with anyone. He's very withdrawn. But he meets Judith, and he's instantly in love, but he's very shy about it. Mm-hmm. He's very, well, I like her, but does she like me? And he is very, like, it's very obvious he likes her, but he winds up saying something to her early on that's like, well, I treat you the way I'd treat any noble woman. You know, women are delicate flowers meant to be looked after.
Except that's not what he said. But that is definitely what she misinterpreted it as.
She misinterprets hard.
The first season and the first half of the second season are basically a series of misunderstandings between the two. So it's very obvious to everyone around them that they both like each other. Like a lot. But they are failing to connect to each other in a meaningful way that they both understand.
I put the blame on him for this one, though. It was kind of refreshing because early on, she suspects that he likes her. But then he says that, and she takes it the wrong way, yes, but if you put yourself in her shoes, she is in a weird situation where she's being a commoner swept up into a palace, and she's being like lavished with all these gifts and rooms and stuff like that, and she honestly doesn't know any of these people. They're already behaving way differently than the novel.
Yeah.
And so she's cautious, and she doesn't want to push her luck because it's a delicate situation that she could easily screw up. And so I don't think this is one of those dense female lead situations.
No, I would not call that. Her misunderstanding is completely understandable. It totally makes sense. There's no point where she is like, before that, she's very much like, this might actually be a thing. And she's sort of working towards that end. Then she's presented with a scenario where it is really ambiguous what he's actually saying. Like we as the
she
readers
keeps looking for confirmation, and he keeps walking it back.
Right. To him, he's confirming it. But to everyone else, we can look at that and go, you're not, though.
He does not, he truly does not seem to register. I just want to say social cues.
There's this is so interesting to me because I do this a lot where I point at a character and go, hey, is this autism? And there's a large chunk of this where you would look at Rudiger and go, is he autistic? But
yeah, that's kind of where I was going.
But I don't think he is. And I think the main thing to look at here is he very much recognized that there were misunderstandings going on and worked to correct them. Now, the work he did to correct them was weird and like very convoluted, but he did recognize that. So there's not like a lack of understanding social cues. He literally just doesn't care about them most of the time.
But he understands them like logically in a bizarre way. Like he needs to be explained. It needs to be explained to him like, okay, the maids are spreading rumors about her. And he's like, oh, so we fire all of them. She's like, well, no, that wouldn't work because A, that's cruel, and B, that's like just going to spread other rumors, you know, like now I'm the lady who got everybody fired. And he's like, oh, you know, so we just got to shut him up. Like, no, like if we could just, you know, handle this delicately in a way that, and he comes up with a plan that is borderline manipulative to spread a different sort of rumor that
It worked.
it does work. And it is funny and it is very him.
I guess that's something we should probably point out. This is, I mean, it's a romance, but also it's a comedy.
Oh yeah, I'd say it's almost like it's not a sitcom in the sense that, like in a sitcom, there's no stakes and everything resets back to normal. But it is a... This is probably giving it a little too much credit, but it's more like a Shakespearean comedy, where the comedy derives from courtship misunderstandings and...
Yeah, the character interactions are where you get the comedic situations. There's drama, but the drama is sort of a secondary thought to these funny situations that are coming up. The drama sort of drives the comedy to that end.
Yeah, the main plot is, in the original novel, Luca, the child who is the protagonist of the revenge novel, had this evil aunt, Judith, who abused him and then tried to sell him when it became apparent he was someone valuable to this noble family.
Yeah, evil is probably a little too much, but she's certainly not a good person.
Yeah. I don't know. She sold a child.
She didn't really sell him, though. Like,
She took money in
Rudiger
exchange
showed
for
up,
handing
and
him
she's like, I spent all my money raising this kid. And he's like, here, have money. They frame it as selling him, but I don't know. It's child support. That's what she says. It's child support.
She does say it's child support. Oh, man.
She was a single mother for, what, 5 years?
Wow.
I think that's fair.
You would make a great defense attorney. But anyway, like she, you know, Otome Isekai is into this character, and now she's been nice to Luca for like a month because she's a normal person who doesn't want to abuse a child. And it's only been a month though.
Yeah.
So the kid's confused by this behavior. He doesn't fully trust it. And then when it comes time for him to go, she's not really selling him anymore. She's like, it's a weird situation now. And all of a sudden out of nowhere, he says, Mom, and he traps her. And then it turns out the kid is very smart. She even wonders if he's another isekai protagonist.
So you got midway through season 2. A lot of the good stuff doesn't, like, it really picks up in season 2. I would say, you know, a third of the way into season 2, but like for real halfway through, it really picks up. Do you have any guesses as to what is going on?
Well, she mentioned he could be isekai'd too. And that seems like a weird thing to mention at all if you're not going to do it.
Because here's the thing. When I was rereading this yesterday, there were a bunch of things where I went, oh my God, they had this at the beginning.
He already knows all the stuff. He knows, like, he knows all his history lessons and everything beforehand. He knows. So I don't know. Is he the original Luca that got reincarnated, or is he another stranger that got reincarnated? It seems like we're doing a secondary isekai.
So we don't have 100% answers to that yet. I did see spoilers about this, and as I said, rereading it, I was like, oh, it's actually really obvious what's going on now. Hindsight being what it is. So major spoilers. Skip a couple minutes if you don't want these. You know how there's a goblet that grants wishes?
Mm-hmm. What did he wish
Eyebrow
for?
raise.
I know he went there and he did something with it, but I don't... Did the original Luca wish for
He
something?
already used his wish in the original timeline. Because everybody he loved is dead. So what would he wish for?
He wished to go back.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, that's good. That's actually good.
Now, the question becomes, why did some random person get pulled in from Korea?
Did he make another wish?
No.
Okay.
Maybe.
I mean, why do they ever, Brad? It's just that's what happens in Korea.
Maybe it has to do with the fact that Judith died far earlier than everyone else in the series.
We've
seen this before very recently. Who Made Me a Princess did this.
Oh, wait. Oh, boy. Wait. Was she originally Judith and then got reincarnated as a Korean person and then got reincarnated back as Judith?
Yeah. Which there were also clues of. Every time she's like, the memories of this body. Or there's a part in the second season when she's thinking about her sister. And she's like, I never even met her. So why am I so upset that she's dead? The clues are there.
Okay. That's a little... that's headier than I thought this series was going to go.
Well, guess what? It gets better. Because there's some information that no one had, even in the original timeline, that comes out near the end of season 2. You know that old man she met in the garden?
Yeah.
You know who that is?
I thought that was the great-grandfather.
Yeah. The previous king.
Yeah.
Do you... do you know why he was looking at her so intently and asking her about her family?
Well, she obviously is somehow connected to his, daughter?
Close. You're close.
Because she looks exactly like Luca's... Is it Luca's mother? Or... No, I'm trying to remember the line
grandmother.
Here. Grandmother, yeah.
So the family tree here is super convoluted. It makes sense when you see it all laid out, but trying to parse it through reading it is a little convoluted. But the great grandfather, so Luca's great grandfather, the previous king, had a sister who he was very enamored with, who ran away from home. And that was Judith's mother.
Oh. I did suspect something like that was going to happen. I didn't know how she would be a royal, but I knew she was.
So technically she's a princess.
Yeah.
And she's got the eyes, the facial structure. Her hair is different, but everything else is very similar. Or no, wait, was it?
The eyes were the big thing.
The eyes definitely. I can't remember if the hair color was the same as her mom, and her sister's hair was the same as the other royals.
She's a Targaryen. She has purple eyes and white hair.
Right. And so, when they're at Luca's debut in the palace, Franz has a scheme that he's doing where he brings in another woman to try and be like, this is also Jonas's son. It's a whole thing, but Judith is prepared for this because this is one of the events out of like 3 that actually still happens from the novel. And so she goes back and forth. She's like, I've got all this evidence that that's not true. And so this woman gets taken away. But then France brings in someone else who's like, that's not Luca's mom, it's his aunt. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, shock. Holy crap. And then the former king comes in and goes, what's all this ruckus about? That's my long lost granddaughter. And everybody's like, oh my God, what the fuck is going on?
Your mind's blown. It's blown again. It's blown further. It's blown across the room.
And this is where it gets so good. So first of all of this is hilarious. You've started this with drama, right? With like, oh, there's a scheme going on and he's trying to like get, and then it's like, oh no, actually this was a comedy the entire time.
Well, and yeah, that's the thing I was going to say that I actually liked about this. And I didn't not read to completion because I didn't like it. I just ran out of time. But as I'm reading it, I don't think I laughed out loud, but it did genuinely make me smile because the comedy works.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it in the first 2 seasons revolves around the fact that you've got Luca, the kid, Judith, the aunt, and Rudiger, I guess the uncle on the other side. And Judith and Rudiger have a budding romance. Luca, as a kid, I don't know what exactly is going on, but he seems to want Judith all to himself.
So the thing is, and this comes out a bit in season 3, Luca is very wary of Rudiger. So he's basically using Rudiger this whole time because in his original life, he thought that Rudiger didn't love him. He loved Rudiger, but Rudiger didn't really return those feelings. Now, we know, because Rudiger's a weirdo, he actually was returning those feelings, but a normal person wouldn't have felt that. And Luca was a normal person. And so, especially after Rudiger sacrificed himself for Luca in the original timeline, he was like, he left me all alone. So he's like not on board with Rudiger. And he doesn't want Judith to go through that. He was very weirded out when he went back in time and then all of a sudden Judith started being nice to him. He doesn't understand what was going on, but he did connect with that and understand what she was doing. And so he did want to take care of her to some degree. So that's where a lot of that's coming from.
Oh, this is all very interesting.
It's such a great series. Yeah. I'm not kidding. It gets so much better because in season 3, so everybody's like, oh my God, this is a long lost princess. Well, you have to stay at the palace now. And she's like, but Luca. And they're like, well, he's a royal too. He can stay here. And then they're like, what? And then, so there is some animosity between the royal family and the Winterwalds, right? Mm-hmm. Because after the former king's sister ran away, he sort of was crazy because he really loved his sister and she's gone. And so when he's got these kids, the child that he has that looked exactly like his sister, he was like crazy about. He sort of didn't take care of his other 2 kids properly, which we do get a bit of explanation about in there. But then his daughter, who he was like all about, went and married the Duke of Winterwald and then died. So that's Sophia, right?
Yeah.
So he's pissed off at the Winterwalds, but they also now have his blood. So he can't like entirely shut them out. And so when they're like, hey, Judith is a princess And then everybody is like, hey, isn't Judith and Rudiger in love? The former king is like, oh, hell no. And he bans Rudiger from the palace. And so now they can't meet. And so, like, they have to, like, meet in secret. Rudiger, like, sneaks onto the palace grounds in, like, a commoner getup to, like, meet and have, like, this tryst. And then, and this is the best part, they have a debut for Judith because she's a new princess, right? And so they have to be like, hey, everybody come to this party, a new princess. And they can't bar Rudiger from the palace for that because it's a huge high society event, right? Mm-hmm. And so he comes in, and as they announce Judith to everyone, they're up there in front of everybody. Rudiger comes in and proposes in front of everybody.
Yep. That makes sense.
And what's even better, Luca is not on board with this. So he comes up and he takes the ring. And Rudiger pulls out a second ring. Because he knew what was going to happen.
You know, I want to say something for anybody listening who might not be like 100% on board with Otome Isekai hijinks. In this particular manga, it is very well done. I shouldn't say manga, manhwa. Webtoon. It's all like foreshadowed. It's all set up and paid off too. Cause like even the fact that he has 2 rings, he has kept on hand multiple sets of jewelry for her before because his family owns a mine. Mm-hmm. And so initially he's just trying to impress her and he gives her a necklace, but he also gave her like 16 other necklaces she could choose from. So it makes sense that he has backup jewelry. Like they set that up.
There's also, there's a point in, I think it's the 2nd season, where they're talking about, I forget the specifics, but I think they were talking about marriage or something like that. And somebody mentioned something about the ring. And so they foreshadowed early on that like, hey, the ring is really important. And you can see on his face, he is taking that information in and storing that and going, that'll be important for later.
Yeah. Well, and even I'll be honest with you. Normally, I do not have much of a reaction one way or another to the isekai or isekai, 3-sekai stuff. Like, normally the idea that the character in a novel was reincarnated in Korea and then that Korean person was reincarnated back into the novel, that normally does very little for me. But in this case, am I to understand that Judith dies, is immediately reincarnated into her Korean self, lives 27 years?
I'm sure that the timelines don't line up.
I don't know, but I think they might, actually. Because, so she might live another, like, 20-some years in Korea. And that would be about the time Luke is making the wish.
Maybe. It's not entirely clear. I don't feel like it was that long. Like, from the time Luca was 10, when, like, the novel started, to the time he was 22 or whatever, when he came back for revenge. I don't feel like that it was long enough.
So he comes back for revenge. He gets his revenge. Does he immediately make the wish?
I think so. Again, I don't have specifics on that. But I think it was pretty, because like that didn't happen in the novel. In the novel, he gets his revenge and then the novel's over.
Yeah.
So
I
think it happened directly after the end of the novel.
I don't need the timelines to line up, but I think it would be cool if they did.
I mean, it's possible.
I think
Maybe
that would
he
be
brooded
cool.
for a lot of years and then was like, you know what? I'm going to use my wish for this.
And in this one, I think it's rewarding that the original Judith, who was mean to him, through experience, learned the error of her ways. Like,
Well, yeah,
lived.
because, I mean, she didn't have a great life in Korea. Now, it didn't seem like it was like, oh, she's abused all the time, but like, she certainly didn't have it good.
But that's actually doing something, and this is probably getting a little like into my douche philosophy territory, but like that's actually doing something with like the philosophical themes of reincarnation.
Yeah.
That it is for the growth of the soul. Like Judith reincarnated into Korea, where she doesn't just suffer though. She has some good times. Like she's a very accomplished softball player. And that comes up many times, which I think is hilarious because she's kind of a jock. Like that's the other thing. She's princess dress up doll, jewelry mannequin, but also she can just beam a guy with a salt shaker to death.
No, he didn't die from getting hit by that.
Yes, he did.
He died because he fell off the train.
Yeah, after she hit him in the head with a salt shaker. Judith has drawn blood.
Also, it was pepper, wasn't it?
I don't care. The point is, Judith has taken human life.
Yeah.
Now, but the idea that her next life taught her something, and then she came back and was able to be nice to the person she had most wronged.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually kind of cool. And that's just like a little side thing going on.
I do wonder, though, like, does Luca know what happened to her for her to die in the first timeline? Because she does, again, she wasn't a great person, but she does end up not going along with the villain's schemes and dying because of that.
I don't know. I
So,
mean,
like,
I obviously I wouldn't know because I haven't read that far.
Was his plan already to try and take her
To
with
try
him?
to rehabilitate Judith?
Because he was like, well, she was not a good person, but in the end, she did a good thing, and so I'm going to try and help her out. Or did he only come up with that after coming back and then going, she's nice all of a sudden. Okay, I can use this.
That's interesting. And that reminds me of another thing in the writing that I like. And that they plant the idea in your head early on that Luca may also be a reincarnator. And so obviously...
They all but telegraph it.
Yeah. Well, so obviously he is, because why would you mention that except to say that, like, that's possible in the rules of this world where you're reading a genre where there's usually only one unless there's an exception. I'm introducing the exception, so here you go. So, but I don't mind that, though, because I think that's better than having it come out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And having the protagonist consider it, it makes sense for her to consider it.
Yeah.
But I like that Luca's behavior, it's subtly weird. And maybe like subtle is the wrong word, but it's...
I was going to say, once he gets into the tutoring and stuff, his behavior is really not that of a 10-year-old.
It's not that of it. Well, I don't know, because I think that Luca's motivations, let's say, for behaving the way he behaves, could be explained equally by being a child who doesn't like mommy's new boyfriend.
Except for the fact that, oh, by the way, he can read.
Yeah. So maybe he's a reincarnated.
And his trying to cover that up is hilarious. Where he's like sitting there reading a newspaper very seriously, and then she's like, "You know how to read?" And he's like, I just know the letters. Water, bubble." It's like, you little bullshitter.
I knew he was a reincarnator, but I did not know why he didn't like Rudiger, because
Yeah.
why would a reincarnator not like Rudiger?
It's definitely not clear. Even now, into the third season, it's not clear. That we didn't get an answer to that yet. They discussed the possibility, or maybe we did. I forget when that was. We might have, because there's a part into season 3 where Judith and Luca sit down and sort of start to confide in each other. And of course it's comedy, and so we don't actually get that yet. But there's the beginnings of it. It's like, hey, we both know that we're both weird. So,
but I think what impresses me about it is I got the vibe he just didn't want to share Judith. Like, at least that was the motivation for his hatred towards Rudiger. As time goes on and he's more and more confident with like ordering people around, and he knows, like, he answers all his tutor's questions, he takes all the stupid tests without attending any classes. Yeah, I start to suspect, okay, he was reincarnated, but still, then why does he dislike Rudiger?
yeah.
And
The person who took care of him for so long.
I honestly, it probably should have, but I didn't seriously consider the possibility that it was Luca from the original story reincarnated into Luca. I thought it might be another person. I don't know why, because
I
obviously that makes more sense.
The key thing that tells you that that's not what's going on is the fact that he is able to answer all of the test questions and stuff.
That's a good point.
Like,
I didn't even think about that.
There's information that's only of this world that he answers very easily.
And he's never played catch.
Yeah, although, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of Korean boys who've never played catch, so.
Okay. I don't know. It seems like a pretty common thing in manga and anime. I have seen more Asian characters playing catch than I have American characters.
I mean, that's true, but also, you got to think about a lot of Korean, Japanese people grow up in cities. And so that's not necessarily something that, I don't know. Maybe it's part of school, so maybe they should, but.
If you're from Korea, tell us how many times you have played catch.
I did think it was weird when they were playing catch, like, he got physically very tired very quickly.
Yes.
Like, too quickly for what they were doing. I was like, that's weird.
Yes.
Someone actually commented on this, but it was weird because we thought, like, oh, he just doesn't want to do this, so he's making an excuse. But then, like, it's shown that he's exhausted. And it's
he's honestly winded, so it's like, you're a sophomore.
Nothing about that came up again, so I don't know if that's a
he's
thing.
Just weak.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get that wind up, Luca. That's okay, though, because baseball, I'm going to say this, and it's going to be contentious. It's a large man's sport. You only have to run for a little bit.
Most sports are.
I don't mean this in a flattering way. Babe Ruth was a great baseball player when he wasn't drunk. Anyway, sometimes when he was. Anyway.
There's a lot of layers in this series. I think that I've spoiled all kinds of stuff, but the reveals are really good. And even if you know what's coming, the structure that they put in place to get there is great. And I got a lot out of this by rereading it. So I think even now, knowing some spoilers, if there's people that are still listening who didn't read it but listen through all those spoilers, you're still going to get something out of this, a lot out of this, by reading it yourself.
It's very well written. I almost wanted to say, when I was reading through season 1, that pacing was a little slow for me, but the more I think about it, the more I think it wasn't slow, it was taking its time.
Yeah, and on reread, I was thinking, yeah, there's a bunch of chapters here, and it takes them a long time to go from they're in Emden, and then they go to Winterwald, and things are happening. But the chapters themselves, most of the time, are very quick. This isn't like there's a lot of dialogue, but it's not heavy dialogue that makes you take a long time to get through it. So even though something might take a couple chapters to get through, if you're reading it all at once, those couple chapters don't take that long to get through.
No, I actually looked because I noticed I was blowing through chapters much faster than I thought. I thought I'd only get through season 1 by the time we recorded. And I knew as I was reading it, I was like, well, I can't stop at season 1 because I could sense there was a lot going on. You're right. The mystery starts to unfold in season 2, but season 1's a lot of sitting around talking.
Yeah.
And once I started to see some of the things they were talking about pay off, I was like, oh, that was pretty clever, actually. Like, the jokes are funny. I don't know. It seems like the series, maybe it starts off a little shaky with, I'd say, maybe the first 10 chapters, but you really don't know what's going on throughout, I'd say, up to the assassination attempt. After the assassination attempt, I think it finds its footing.
Sure. Although there's definitely stuff before that that hooks you. There's comedy bits before that make you chuckle, make you go, oh, huh, that's interesting. So it's not that there's nothing. I don't think you'd necessarily need to get, what was that, 15 chapters in for that part?
Yeah.
To really see and get hooked on it. But if I was going to recommend someone to try this, I'd say get to Winterwald. Like, get that far at least before you make a decision.
Well, I think the reason it takes a while to warm up is the interesting stuff for me comes from the 3 main characters interacting with each other. It's Judith, Luca, and Rudiger. And the situations they create for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely like the main hook.
And so
but I will say the side characters are really great too, in lots of different ways.
Well, I like the core of the story being, like, every chapter, you're going to get some weird Judith Rudiger nonsense, and then Luca's usually there too. But I like that it's the novel that she is familiar with has changed so much and there's so much that wasn't included in the novel, that there's an actual mystery that you are actually given enough information to start piecing together.
Yeah.
Especially with Luca's, was it grandmother? Yeah. Luca's grandmother, and this is spoilers. Obviously, we're deep into spoilers, but like, there's a railroad. and everybody keeps talking about this stupid railroad as if it's the driving factor of the plot. That the Winterwald family wants the rights to build and tax this railroad that's going to make a lot of money, and At first, I was like, wow, as a proponent of walkable cities and public transportation, I really respect how interested a governing body is in building a railroad. I mean, I that would be refreshing to see. I wish that's what our politicians were fighting about. Who gets to build the railroad? But then it turns out maybe it wasn't really about the railroad. And I was like, obviously I should have known that. But I underestimate these webtoons so much that it's obvious. Like you hear them talking about the railroad and you're like, well, that's kind of underwhelming.
Oh my God, Ben, people are going to be listening to this going, when are you going to do the Villainous Lives again?
Maybe I'll stop underestimating them when we do that. Maybe
you should probably start reading that one now, because
is that like the next one?
192 chapters and you have to read the whole thing.
I have to read the whole thing. Okay.
No, we'll do that one in like a couple months.
Okay.
Just start it. Read 2 chapters a day.
But yeah, you find out that the railroad was a flimsy excuse.
Yeah.
For the Duke of Winterwald to marry the king's daughter? And he actually wanted the king's daughter's friend who was going to come with her. And it was a contract marriage just to get one child so that he'd have a claim to royal blood. And then he wanted to like let her go and marry her friend. She was supposed to divorce him.
He didn't even actually care about the claim to royal blood. He just knew that what's her name?
It's not. Is it Sophia? No,
Sophia is the princess.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I wish I could remember her name, and the reason I can't is because it's only mentioned a handful of times, and people usually refer to her by her title.
The Duchess.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that is Sophia. Wait, so who was the...
Vanessa?
No, Vanessa's the other one. Or no. Yeah, Vanessa.
See, I'm paying attention. I'm unraveling this.
Anyway,
So
I don't know how much of that I have to cut out, but yeah. So the Duke wanted Sophia, who was Vanessa's lady in waiting.
yeah,
But Sophia wouldn't leave Vanessa.
dude,
So he needed
what is going
Vanessa's
on with those two?
kid in order to get Sophia.
Yeah.
What they didn't expect to happen was that Vanessa would die.
Did they kill her?
No, she literally died after giving birth.
She just died of giving birth.
Right. And that's the thing, because there's a point in season 2 where one of the other...
Because the Duke has every motivation to kill her.
The king's sister. So that's the thing. They keep setting up all this stuff of like, oh, there's stuff going on, and maybe some people are sneaky and evil and everything. And it actually turns out that most of the stuff you think is bad that happened, there was a good reason for it. And it wasn't that the people were evil.
So here's where I sat in season 2. And I'm still skeptical. Like, and knowing that this is not yet finished, I'm still skeptical. So Sophia is so attached to Vanessa. Is that okay? Sophia is so attached to Vanessa that is this bait, or is this like they seem like more than just friends?
I mean, I don't know.
The only thing that lends any like skepticism to them being more than just friends is that there is a third woman who also is fiercely loyal to Vanessa, who Sophia calls upon. to act as chaperone to Judith.
That's the current king's sister.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that there's definitely some weird feelings between all of them.
Because
But
the only way the Duke could marry Sophia is if the only way he could get near Sophia is if he got near Vanessa. So Vanessa accepts a contract marriage. I don't fully understand what she got out of it.
I think the thing is that she wanted Sophia to live a happy life apart from her. That's why she did that. She cared about Sophia, but not like I want her all to myself cared about her. She just saw that Sophia would never leave her and be happy on her own.
Is Sophia happily married to the Duke?
Yeah, they love each other.
Okay.
But Sophia loved Vanessa more than she loved the Duke.
Yeah.
But
so I'm just telling you right now, this is my full drama. I'm spilling my tea. Sophia's bi. Her first love was Vanessa. She settled for the Duke.
Maybe.
Only after Vanessa died, which makes me think the Duke had a reason to kill Vanessa.
No, but see, the thing is, and they did say this in the comic, is that if Vanessa and the Duke had a kid, the kid would stay there at the duchy. And
trapping Sophia.
Sophia would stay there for that child because that child has Vanessa's blood. So the original plan was that Vanessa was going to go back to the royal family. They'd get a divorce. The kid would stay in the duchy. Vanessa would go back. But she apparently couldn't have kids and died.
This is sus as fuck.
There's definitely
I don't trust anybody. I suspect everyone of everything.
Maybe.
This is my cynical, like, true crime horror brain.
Who's the person you least suspect did something bad?
Of who? Like, who can I lump into this?
I mean, everybody.
Yeah. Judith, because I know what she did.
I mean,
I know what Judith did. And I think that's the least, I think she's the least culpable. I don't know. Rudiger, I guess.
I don't think non-main characters, but
okay, non-main character.
So there's all the princes and princesses.
Laura.
What?
Laura, the maid.
That's a good guess. No, she's just great.
Yeah. It's always I always like the maid.
The little bit of information that I don't have I didn't go full on spoilers with this one, but the little bit of information I have that goes, oh, I didn't suspect that, is Jonas. Jonas did something bad.
No,
and
I
now
suspect
he's dead.
Yeah, Jonas. No. Jonas, the fuck boy. You didn't suspect him?
I didn't think he would do something evil.
Oh, they all do.
I thought he was literally just a jerk.
This is my true crime brain. Like, oh, that frat boy? No, he did some stuff. He did the party boy facade. It's all fun and games until we find out what he does when he doesn't get his way. No.
Funny enough, it wasn't any party antic stuff. So yeah, there's a lot going on. I wanted to say, as much as the writing in this is like really solid and there's lots of like clues about what's going on early on, you read it again and you pick up on all these things. The art in this is incredibly solid to the point where, as I was rereading this, so it's basically just a sort of a standard manhwa style, but it's like, it's one of those ones where, I mean, we've said this about other series where it's like, it's so competent in what it's doing that you sort of forget about the fact that this is a comic that's on a website and not like something someone's drawing as art to put up, or, you know, and
Have
something
you ever heard of Clip Studio Paint?
yeah.
That's what I was looking into, how they make these things. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be the tool that I've asked a couple of times about, like, what they use to do this. And it's that I think I found my answer.
I don't know that everybody does this, but a lot of people that I've seen, what they will do is they will take a 3D program. You know, we have all these 3D assets, but they'll actually take a 3D program and put basically mannequins into poses and then draw over top of that.
Clip Studio does that.
Yeah.
It gives you those 3D mannequins, and you can actually take models using, like, your own camera. Mm-hmm. Like, you can do a pose and it'll try to render it.
That makes me wonder if they're doing this for It's Time, or Villainous Flips the Script, because something I noticed while rereading this is that they use body language so well in this series. Like, it literally stuck out to me. I went, oh my God, I can visibly see what these people are feeling because of how well they're using body language. I was surprised. So it makes me wonder if they're literally setting up situations, taking a picture, and then, like, going over that.
Yeah, and they have to keep the art interesting, because there's so little action going on. It's just people talking. And so they have to, like, there's an old joke about the Phantom Menace, where it's just camera A, camera B, sitting on a couch, walking down a hallway, people talking. And it's part of the reason it doesn't feel like a very fun Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I mean, George Lucas isn't a very good director. That's why other people directed most of those movies.
But this has the vibe of, I want to say, like, one of the old, like, BBC Agatha Christie dramas. And I'm partly saying that because they spend so much time on trains, which, again, I love the public transportation. I don't love their royal carriage all to themselves. I think that's a waste of fuel. But
speaking of which, I thought it was interesting how they were like, oh, it takes 3 days by train to get from Winterwald to the capital. And I was like, where in Europe does it take 3 days by train to get somewhere? Holy crap.
Oh, dude, I don't know. Have you ridden the Amtrak? It takes you, like, to go from here to Baltimore, you got to go to Philly. You can't just start heading south.
The actual train ride itself is like half an hour.
The actual train ride itself is... So I took a train from here to Pittsburgh, and it was 5 hours.
What?
Yeah. I would love to take the train. The train travels at like 50 miles an hour the whole way.
Oh. But Pennsylvania is also 5 times bigger than Europe, so...
Is it than the whole of Europe?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's accurate.
No, I think I just found it interesting because, you know, at this point you can go from, like, London to frickin' Belgium in like 5 hours.
Yeah.
And so even on a slower train, if we say, oh, this is old technology that they're using in this, you know, in this world, like, they've got to be going at least, 40 miles an hour, right? That's sort of like an old train speed, right? So for 3 days, it's the empire must be the whole size of Europe.
I would think it seems kind of like, just based on climate, the Winterwalds are kind of like a northern, like maybe Germany.
Yeah.
And they're going to like maybe Italy.
Yeah, that would make sense.
But I do like the distinct features. The timeline's a little weird. I kind of like how they've thrown out Like, it's just the aesthetic of European fantasy. They're not trying to do any intense, like, analog to reality, because, like, the Winterwalds have been ruling these lands for literally 2,000 years.
Right.
Since the birth of Christ, our Savior.
Yeah, the technology moves very slowly in this world because they're like, yeah, we built a train 35 years ago. It's like, wait, so trains weren't invented till like 50 years ago or something like that? Like,
You know, this is totally random. It's a total aside, and I'm just shamelessly plugging something else I do, but that Tolkien podcast I do. Freaking Legolas is like 3,000 plus years old.
yeah.
In his 3,000 years, they've made no technological progress.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, there is a point. So for like elves who live with nature, right? I can see them not seeking out new technology, especially, I don't think the elves use magic constantly, but they use it enough that probably like the big problems get solved with magic.
Yeah.
I feel like in a world with magic, it makes sense that technology does not progress.
Yeah.
And you could say, because in this series, in that world, they did have magic. And so even though, like, it's sort of gone away at this point, even though we're told, like, there is still magic, but nobody knows how to use it, right? We have a magic goblet. That's about all we know. So it makes sense that, like, recently people were like, hey, we should do some technology stuff because we don't have magic anymore.
I was thinking about that, and this is a cheap shot at, you know, the fairy tale logic of it all, but what does it say about the world that its leaders get one wish, each one of them, and the world still sucks? There's still a rigid caste system, and poverty runs rampant.
I mean, isn't that sort of how our billionaire class works right now?
Yeah, yeah.
They can have whatever they want, and they don't use that to fix anything.
I just don't usually write love stories about Elon Musk.
I mean, you could probably write, 14 different books about that now?
I could write...
How many women was it?
He'd definitely die and be reincarnated to die over and over and over again in my fantasy.
How long would it take him to learn a lesson?
I don't know. But like the characters of this book, he did own an emerald mine.
All right. Well, did you have any other specific points you wanted to go over before we jump into the rubric?
Nope.
All right. Well, let's do that then. So we're going to do romance. This is going to be a little bit difficult for you because the real romance stuff doesn't really kick in until the end of, I guess, the middle of season 2, but really at the end of season 2 and into season 3 is where it's like, oh, this is definitely a romance story.
I'm erring on the generous side for romance. I can tell you that right now because I do like it. I think it's cute.
So we'll be doing romance. I wanted to let everyone know that Ben rewrote some of this stuff. So go on our website where the rubric, the interactive rubric is. You can take a look at that. I didn't think a lot of these were drastic enough that it's like, oh, our previous ratings, we have to throw them away.
No, that was kind of the goal. I didn't want to invalidate the previous ratings. I did want to take into account the things we learned from doing like the bottom of the barrel episode and make the, especially the characters and romance sections less specifically targeted at certain kinds of problems and more general, like, does the romance work or does it not work?
Yeah. I did think it, as I was reading through them, I was like, there are some series that I think might have scored a little bit better, and some series that I think would have scored a little worse overall. I don't think that would have drastically changed our point value, but it's possible that some of them would go, up one or down one. But
maybe I'll tell you what, if anybody really cares, if you reread the rubric and you've got a series in mind, I'll re-rate it.
Yeah. And there is a point where we're going to have to do some catch up on some of the series that we've read that have now finished. There's a couple of them now that are actually done. Villains Are Destined to Die will be over soon. Kill the Villainess finished. Solitary Lady is finished. Actually, that might be it. These take so long to finish. Anyway, so yeah, let's jump into the rubric. And once again, remind people they can go on our website, Rubric Along With Us. We have an interactive rubric. You go in there, you click on the boxes, and then you get a score at the end. So to kick us off, we start with content and ideas. I have some thoughts about this, but Ben, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are first.
I'm at like a 4.5.
Okay.
And I can't decide to go 4 or 5. And I'll tell you why. I think it's because I don't think the material in the novel or in the comic is particularly original. Like, I don't think the ideas are so original, but the plot points that are there are very well developed. The characters are very well developed. I wonder if there's you tell me if this sounds condescending. Is there an Otome Isekai curve? Because they're all going to be kind of samey because the genre is just kind of somebody's always reincarnated as like a medieval European aristocrat.
So there's something interesting here because I was going to go with a 4 for this.
Okay.
But you've actually talked me up to a 5 accidentally.
How did I do it?
Because as you're describing there's things that these other series do. You are right. This isn't 100% original. However, all of the things that this does that are not necessarily original ideas, it does better than any other series.
Yeah. I mean, at least any other one that I've read. So I'm interested in the wider perspective.
All of the tropes and things that you get out of Otome Isekai that you're like, oh, they're doing this again, they're doing that again. I mean, to an extent, we like that because it's comforting and the same, and we like those story beats. When you read this series, it really stands out from those because even though it has a lot of those same tropes, it really elevates them. It does them to such a high degree. It executes them so well that it may as well have been the originator of those ideas.
Because that's what I was hung up on. Because I wrote for a 5, it's exceptionally original or interesting ideas that are thoroughly developed in a way that has a lasting impact. It's thoroughly developed and it has a lasting impact. The fact that I can sit here and say the following sentence without thinking about it, that I think that the Duke had Vanessa killed to get to Sophia, knowing that she would stay to take care of Jonas, and none of those people are main characters. I never remember all of these dumb soap opera names. But I got so invested, and I have headcanon about And I'm angry at the Duke. I don't trust him. I legit don't trust him. And nobody else has ever, I don't want to say no other Otome Isekai, but like few have ever gotten me into the drama in that way, that I'm like scheming alongside. Normally it's pretty easy to figure out. Sometimes it's not even the point to figure it out because the main character already knows everything. But yeah, I'm going with a 5. I mean, why not? I'm never generous. So let's just be crazy today.
I mean, you tend to want to be generous with stuff you like, so that's where I'm at anyway. Well, that moves us down to pacing and structure. And again,
yeah,
this is sort of an on the fence one, because it's like the pacing and organization are not necessarily perfect. There are times when you go, oh, this feels like it might be taking a little while. But the times when you actually feel that are few and far between. And a lot of the time, that pacing actually ends up being right and good. Even if in the moment you don't quite feel that, when you get to the end of that particular piece, you go, oh, okay, we let that breathe because this happens, and so on and so forth.
I think I'm gonna temper my generosity here, and I'm gonna say a 4. And the reason I'm gonna say a 4 is because I think season 1, and this is like, I'm being very nitpicky here, but season 4 ends on like a meh note. Or season 1. I gave it a 4. It's season 1 that I have a problem with. Season 1 ends on a meh note. It doesn't feel like a very big ending. You could have paced some of these conversations a little faster, especially her internal monologue. That's the weakness of like every Otome Isekai. Mm-hmm. They do a really good job of showing and not telling. But I'm going to be very, very honest with you guys. I have to find places to take points off.
Well, as someone who is well into season 3 at this point, I'm going to give it a 5. Because basically right away in season 2, whoever was directing this, whether it's the artist or if they had an editor or whoever, they learned a lesson from season 1, and they go full on and go, something interesting is going to happen every single chapter. Whether or not we're sitting around waiting for a bigger event, something interesting is going to happen. They really, what does it say here? Payoffs are executed with precision. I really feel like they are doing such a good job all through season 2 into season 3. I agree with your criticisms on season 1. I think a 4 is fair for that, but I think they really brought it back around, and so
I don't have a problem with a 5.
Well, moving on to characters, I think this is a pretty easy one.
What are you giving it?
I'm giving this a 5.
I'm giving it a 5.
The characters, I mean, the characters are the whole point. And we already have let the cat out of the bag that we love this. And the reason we love it is because of the characters.
Yeah.
They're all full of life and interesting and fun and mysterious and funny. And it's just everything you want. Judith, the main character, is such a good main character. She's not perfect, but she's nice. She's trying to do her best. She's thrown into this situation that she has no idea what's going on. You can feel her emotions. You can see what she's trying to accomplish and do good, but also she's human, and you can see that she does want to be actually taken care of, even though she sort of said that as a joke. But oh no, she actually does, like, she doesn't actually want to have to do commoner, taking care of everyday life stuff all the time. She likes to have a maid who makes her tea, you know, like. And speaking of which, the maid is like a real person. And you're like, oh, the maid is like all about, you know, she's all bubbly and happy and she just wants to take care of Judith all the time. But then you see later on, oh no, she is actually reporting stuff to Rudiger or whoever. Like, she's not just completely loyal to Judith. She's like a real person with a job that she's doing, even though she's bright and bubbly and a nice person. And you want to have for them to have a good relationship. And then there's Rudiger, who's like, oh, what the heck is going on with him? He's like, oh, but then you can sort of see behind the scenes, they do those shots where like he's got a look on his face that is telling you more than what his language is doing. And then you've got Luca, who is like, oh, there's this little kid, but wait, he's not acting like it's. I'm just going on and on about this, but every single character in this makes you go, this is a real person who is doing real things.
I'm partial to it because when I read romance, especially, whether it's novels or webcomics, I'm looking for it to be character driven.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, as much as I've come to like Otome Isekai, I think Isekai has a problem where the power fantasy sort of leads you to it leads a writer to shy away from dramatic tension because the main character simply knows too much or is too powerful. And that sometimes that's fun because sometimes you just want to see the good guy win.
Right.
But this being a comedy-ish, I mean, it's light, I should say. Light-toned.
Yeah.
But takes itself seriously in the points where it needs to take itself seriously. The drama comes from the characters interacting. She does not have total mastery of every situation. That there's two reincarnators, meaning she can be caught off guard. They have different information about the world.
Well, and I think that's a big difference between a lot of Otome Isekai and normal Isekai. It's not that no Otome Isekai are power fantasies, and it's not that every regular Isekai is a power fantasy, but a general trend is that an Otome Isekai has that drama because the person being reincarnated or transferred or whatever it is, they might have some knowledge, but they don't have amazing powers most of the time.
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes they do, but also sometimes they don't demonstrate like the kind of physical mastery of a situation that an isekai protagonist might have.
Right.
But they have a psychological mastery of the situation. It's the fantasy of like, I don't mean to gender this, but like taking the mean girl down. Like you have the perfect thing to say to the insult.
Yeah.
And so it just felt more like a cast of characters interacting in a way that creates tension. And I think I like that. There's a tension and a breaking of the tension that's handled well. And it's going to be a through line in all the ratings because everything about it works together to do that. It raises tension and then it breaks it in a satisfying way.
Yep. So the next up is romance. I have given this 5s so far. What do you think I'm going to give romance?
I'm giving it a 4. So I would think a 4 is reasonable. But if you give it a 5, I don't think I'd be shocked, but I think you're being generous.
I'm giving it a 4.
Okay.
So as much as I really like the romance, and I'll read this out. A 4 is, the romantic relationships are memorable and satisfying. The reader is emotionally invested in the partners coming together. I think that perfectly sums this up, because the romance in this, while it's important, is not necessarily the main point most of the time. It's sort of the secondary plot of what's going on. It's a through line and it's important, but it's not the main point of the whole series. And so because of that, I don't think it can quite get elevated to a 5. As much as I enjoy it, it doesn't, what is it? It's not the stuff of legends, poems, and songs.
Yeah.
Now, I think the second point here, the author was able to make the reader feel all the tension, joy, and or pain of the characters. I think it probably does hit that in a lot of circumstances, but it's not all the time throughout those interactions. And so I don't think it's quite far enough. I'd probably, if we gave half scores, this would be a 4.5.
Yeah. What I'm missing is I think a 5 is like really the extra mile here. Like, I don't think when I'm kind of what I was trying to get at when I rewrote the 5 is this the kind of romance that you would basically hold up as like the archetype of romance? Is this the Romeo and Juliet, the Mark Antony and Cleopatra, like, kind of thing?
And who knows, maybe it'll turn into that later on in season 3, because like Rudiger and Judith are being kept apart even though they're so in love.
I think that's a good that's a step in the right direction. What I haven't seen that maybe is in the later chapters that are out is Rudiger's side of the romance is just a smidge underdeveloped. And again, that's nitpicking. He fell in love with her at first sight, and I can tell you I don't fully understand why. I know why she likes him, because it's from her perspective. I don't really have his perspective yet. So I know that's what I would need, I think. I don't know what it is about her that changed his mind on all women. Or changed his mind on marriage in general, I should say.
Yeah. I was thinking that I don't think this series can actually be a 5 in romance ever, because God damn it.
It's not trying to be.
I don't think it can ever be a 5 in romance, because to be in 5 in romance, it would have to not have as much comedy in it.
Yeah.
And like, the comedy is such a core part of this. Like, the romance and the comedy are intertwined. And I really love that. I think they do it so good. And that came through in my ratings for content ideas and pacing and structure and characters. But romance, the best romance, you can't have that much comedy in it. There can be little bits of comedy in it, but it can't be a main point of the series, which it is here. And I love it for that, but it's a detriment to the romance itself, which is like, it doesn't need to be a 5 in romance. I don't want it to be a 5 in romance. It's an interesting way that a rubric works, is that like the fact that this is so good in so many other ways means that it can't be 100 out of 100.
The rubric is not designed to get, I've never given anything 100 on any rubric I've ever used.
I think it's possible, but it's not possible in this series. Like, because of what this series is, you'd have to have a series that had all of the good content ideas, pacing, structure, and characters without the intertwining of the comedy and romance that this is doing.
Yeah.
But if you tried to do that in this series, the other ones would go down, because this series is built on that comedy and drama back and forth stuff.
So you don't want a version of Romeo and Juliet where the priest discovers their bodies and is like, waka waka.
Romeo and Juliet is not a good romance. I was like, anybody who's like, oh my God, this is so... No, it was a, 3-5 day fling between a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old that ended in 6 deaths.
Are you... Yeah. Yeah. But that's what it is to be in love.
Anyway, art competency. I'm going to go with a 4 on this.
I went with a 4. It's no flaws. I won't say no flaws. I found flaws, but I'm being a jerk. I found a couple of panels. I have them saved on my phone. Maybe I'll post them. But I found one where they forgot to color the model.
Oh.
There's a scene where Laura is standing there talking to people in the background, and one of her feet is just a gray model.
Nice.
So I caught you
when you're trying to put stuff out every week.
Yep, I caught you. You're canceled now. Art is over. No, but overall, I mean, it's no flaws. They're doing everything right. Shot composition's good.
Yeah, it is.
Coloring's good.
It's literally competent. Like,
yeah.
The art allows you to sink into the story. As I said before, they do such a good job with shot composition and like body language and expressions and all this stuff. It's done so well, but I wouldn't say to someone, "Oh, you should read this just because of how pretty it is."
No, if you take a look at it at a glance, it looks like every other webtoon.
Right.
But going deeper into it, it's exactly what I would expect from a professional webtoon artist. I mean,
it's literally the top of the game for
Yeah.
standard looking.
Yeah. It's professional. Yep.
Now, that said, moving on to, okay, we renamed this visual effects / stylistic flourish. Because apparently artistic flourish wasn't right. Do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So I'm rewriting it, and I'm thinking, like, so part of the reason I renamed it was because everybody who ever had to use the rubric besides us has asked what it meant. So I tried to make it a little more explicit. What we're going for here is basically the art competency is illustration. Are things composed well? Is this drawing good? And then visual effects stylistic flourish is, are you adding something on top of that? This is almost like the what is it? Clip Art Studio or Clip Studio Paint? Clip Art Studio. Are you using Clip Studio Paint effects? Are you adding something in the paneling? Are you...
Clip Art Studio was for the Villainess Survives in the Wilderness.
Yeah. Oh, but are you going in after a drawing has basically been rendered to a point of completion and adding something on top of it? So this is everything after the illustration and coloring. Have you added effects? Have you added paneling?
So we're talking about things like shadows and lighting. We're talking about visual elements that like add to the feeling of a scene, such as like flowers in the background to denote, happy feelings going on, or romance, various things like that. Basically, the visual effects.
But I renamed it. I added style because we also mentioned we wanted to give points here if some unique stylized
Yeah.
something is displayed. Basically, do you differentiate it from every other webtoon?
Right.
I could give you points for that here.
For example, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure would get a 5 in
Yes.
visual effects and stylistic flourish. Because that's like the whole point of that.
It's all style. Yeah.
There's some substance.
Yeah.
So for this, I'm actually going to go with a 3.
Yeah, I'm at a 3. It's very... It does what it needs to do and not much more.
So, and we've gone over this so many times in past episodes, but a 3 doesn't mean it's bad. A 3 basically means it does what it needs to do. It doesn't really go above and beyond. It's fine. It's not a detriment, but it's not great.
Yeah. At a 3, I'm not going to remember it for whatever I'm rating it a 3 for.
So, especially in the first season, they get away from it a little bit in the second season and third season, but like, it's very much just paneled. You have a panel surrounded by white. Some of the stuff goes out of the panels. Every once in a while, there's like a tableau that is like a bigger picture on its side, you know, that you scroll through. But for the most part, it's literally just white background paneling.
You could Photoshop a lot of Dairy Queens in here.
Yeah. Well, that might be...
Not within the panels.
Yeah.
But there's so much unused white space on the page itself.
The Dairy Queen background doesn't quite translate into manhwa the same way it does in manga. Because when we do that with manga, we're talking about like the panels themselves are lacking a background.
The panels in manga are expected to fill a page.
Right.
Whereas in manhwa, they're allowed to exist within a white void.
Right. So,
but this white void is larger than other white voids.
Yeah, and in a lot of series, the white void gets filled with flowers or lighting effects or things like that. And that's what really will elevate a series in terms of visual effects stylistic flourish.
You know what they had instead of Dairy Queens in the background? Translators' notes commenting on how hot the guy was.
Well, that's only...
links to their Discord.
Read the official one up until you get to where you can't read anymore. And I say that specifically because I did notice in rereading, the scanlators who did the version that we were doing screwed up a lot of the names. And there were also some points where I was like, a whole bubble. I'm like, I don't think that was translated properly.
No, there's also a couple of points where, like, Korean speaking conventions are used. Like, the translation isn't wrong, but they're saying, like, there's a lot of, like, saying the name instead of using a second person pronoun.
Yeah. You know what really pissed me off, though? I was rereading it, and they would, like, screw up some names. And, you know, I'm not someone who's going to, like, oh, I'm holding you to the highest standard, and how dare you screw up anything. But there was one point where they were referring to the maid, Laura, and literally the next panel, they called her Lola. And I'm like, it's right there. You just got it right. What are you doing?
Well, I better not have seen a note from the quality checker on how much they were shaking when this confession happened. These were not the I'll say, just for the people who translated it, these were not the most intrusive translation notes I've ever seen. They were actually kind of funny. but
yeah,
I don't like that.
Sometimes I like the scanlator notes, but sometimes they go way too overboard. These ones weren't egregious, but I think these people screwed up in other ways, and so I want to hold them to account for that. But as I said, read the official. We do want to support these creators, because especially a series like this that is done so well, we want to give them money for what they have done.
I'll tell you what, Korea. I mean, I'm sure like somebody in the publishing industry will come to your house and break your kneecaps if you say this, but hey, just launch a Patreon. I'll give you $5 a month. We don't need to involve Tapas in this.
Any more thoughts on the visual effects stylistic flourish?
No, they really don't do much with it. So
yeah. As I said, it does increase as the series goes on. And I thought a lot of those tableaus that they did were done really well. A lot of it is like when there's two people sitting across from each other talking about something important, and they'll do just a nice long shot of them that you have to scroll through. I think that was done very well. But yeah, overall, they don't really go into that. And I think it's probably because they spend all of their time on competency. Like they're making the panels done so. And I should say, like, the panel backgrounds and stuff, the stuff that's going on inside the panels, the backgrounds in there are done so well. They have a very clear setup and as far as like shot framing and everything. There's even on reread, I didn't see any points where I was like, that seems sort of weird. I will say, though, Rudiger is gigantic.
Yeah.
And there's some times when you see him next to someone and you're like, that doesn't look right. But I think it's right. I think he's just literally gigantic.
If I've learned one thing from webtoons, it's that there are plenty of women out there who like a long torso.
Yeah. I thought it was funny because like there's a point where you see Judith is holding Luca's hand, and like he's a 10-year-old. It's a small hand in Judith's hand, and she's a woman. So you're like, oh, she's already got small hands, but you can see that this is a child's hand. And then contrast that with her holding Rudiger's hand, and her hand looks like a child's hand in his hand.
I would have given this a 4 for style, like, because to your earlier point about like it can't necessarily get a 5. There's not really a lot to work with here in terms of, this isn't Master Villainous the Invincible. They're not firing off key blasts. They're not.
Yeah.
So I could have given it a 4 if it had a unique art style that didn't look like every other webtoon, like if the artist had used a personal style or something. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, that wasn't the choice, probably for time and cost and all that. So, yeah.
I don't think that's going to be too detrimental to the final score, especially because when it comes to personal preference, I think everybody already knows what I'm going to give this. So that's a 5 for me. So the question is, how positive is Ben on this?
I would say I'm at a 4.5. I can't say I wouldn't change a thing. There are tiny little nitpicks I would change, but I'm rounding it up to a 5.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, you can give it a 4 now, and then when you get caught up in season 3, you'll be like, this is a 5.
No, I'm rounding it up to a 5. This is...
Then you won't have to change it in the future.
I'd say this is one of my top 3 so far.
Yeah. I don't know how many. I have like 5 or 6 number ones. I'm one of those people who's like, well, I can't pick a favorite because they all do different things, and I like all of them for different reasons, even though I think they're all great. So, but this is definitely in the Hall of Fame for me. And because of that, because of all of the other scores that we gave it for everything else, I think this is the first time I'm going to give this a 5 for recommendation strength.
Yeah. I was thinking about it because, again, realistically, Would I recommend this to just anyone? Like, would I recommend this to my mom? No.
Really?
No.
See,
She
I would. I would
but-
recommend this to my mother. I would recommend this to. I don't think Kermit would like this, even though I feel like he should. Because the thing is, there's so much different stuff going on in here. It's comedy, it's drama, it's mystery, it's romance. It's got everything.
So what I'm thinking when I think general audience, or most people, I'm thinking there's no way someone like my mom is not going to find the reincarnation stuff silly. And so that's just like a bias that will never be overcome for any Otome Isekai.
But I don't know if that matters here because it's a comedy.
It would matter. It would matter. So that's what I was thinking. Like, I got to get that out of my head. I'm going to say I would recommend this to anyone who is open-minded towards the ideas like of the genre. I think that's the main thing. Like, you're not going to recommend it to somebody who doesn't care at all about like period dramas. Like, I don't want to see people in Victorian dresses doing tea time. Like, yeah, you kind of got to write that off.
See, I feel like there's enough here that even for someone who is coming into this going, this is a stupid premise, they would get invested in it. There's definitely a certain, minimum number of chapters that they're going to need to read, which maybe that's the hurdle. Because I can see not getting over that prejudice in the first 5 chapters. But by the time you get to chapter 20 or something like that, I think that all goes out the window. Personally, I'm going to recommend this to everybody.
I'm giving it a 5. I'll give it a 5. I'm not going to second guess and nitpick my way out of it.
Well, there you have it. Go tell everyone you know to read this series.
So I came up with 89 out of 100.
Yep, that's what I've got for you. And for me, I've got a solid 92.
I'd round mine up to 9 out of 10 if I was going out of 10.
I think an 89 is definitely a 9 out of 10. I think a 92 is also a 9 out of 10. If this had hit 95, I would have gone, this is my 10 out of 10. But it doesn't quite get there. So
they just needed that visual effects.
Maybe by the time this is over, this will be a 10 out of 10. Because I don't think it needs much for me to get there. Bump up the visual effects and you're there. But that also doesn't mean go crazy with the visual effects. That could be a detriment, so you gotta be careful.
There's a panel in this comic where Judith tells Luca that he's going to take a math quiz, even though she knows he will probably pass it, because he needs to constantly be nervous about school. And A, that's like the most Asian parent thing I've ever heard. And B, that's how I feel about rubricing. I always want to keep you nervous.
All right. Well, there we have it. The objective reality of the situation is that this series is friggin' awesome. The real question, I think, at this point is this my number one? Given the objective nature of the rubric, does this get my number one slot? I'm not sure. There's 2 or 3 others that I'm like, I'm also going to give personal preference 5 on. So I guess we'll have to see. One of the ones we're going to put up for a poll for next time is one of those ones that might be above this one. Who knows? We'll have
Not
to
trying
see.
to sway the poll, but like if you picked it, you might find out.
All right. Any closing thoughts for the rubric?
No, I think we've been well over everything I have to say.
We were pretty close on that. We only differed on pacing and structure, so I think that shows how accurate it is.
Mathematical precision restored. The bottom of the barrel threatened to beat it, but we got there.
All right. Well, for next time, there will be a poll up on Patreon that any of our supporters can vote on. So make sure you check that out. That'll be up for, we'll just do a week. I was thinking about maybe extending it since our schedule now is a 6-week schedule, but especially since you need to read The Villainess Lives Again, we probably want to give you more time to get through these.
Hooray!
You should start reading the Villainess Lives Again today.
I probably will.
Okay, so first up, and this was on the poll last time. We're gonna keep on I Shall Master This Family. That is one of my favorites, and it's doing some real fun stuff recently. I'm gonna leave that on there until it gets picked. Next up, I thought we should probably throw in a recommendation. We haven't done that in a couple episodes. So from Marina, we've got a recommendation of how Ray Liotta ended up in the Duke's mansion. Recommendation from Marina. This does have an anime. I have heard it's not good. But I have also heard that the series itself is pretty good. So we'll probably want to check that out at some point. Maybe it'll be next episode. We'll see. And finally, that's going to actually turn out to be a pun. I'm actually putting a manga on the list.
My God.
We haven't done a manga yet. I thought, we've been doing this for long enough. I think it's probably time that we should throw one of those on there. We'll see if that's what, people want to cover. So the one I picked for this, it is on the recommendation list that I gave you. May I ask one final thing? So those will be the picks for next time. As I said, go on Patreon and go ahead and vote for those. Our lowest tier is only $1, and the lowest tier does get to vote on these, so make sure you check that out. Well, thanks for listening. Hope you had fun with that. We had a good time. As you can tell, we really like this series, so it's always fun to gush about stuff you like. As much fun as it was also to rage about stuff, but I don't like to do that too often.
I do.
Well, you do that every week on Words About Books. So
I hate books.
Yeah, so thanks to Sugoi Mart for partnering with us. Sugoi Mart's a retailer of Japanese snacks, drinks, toys, and merch, and they've got a lot of cool stuff you can't get outside Japan. Our listeners can check the link in the description or use code APR15 at checkout to get 15% off their first order, which also helps us out. And we'd like to know what you think. You can find us on social media and tell us if you have a series you want us to cover. You can find all our social media links and other things on our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. We put up posts for every podcast episode, so you can go there and comment about them. Or you can join us on our Discord, where you can chat with us about the episodes, as well as other things. We talk about all kinds of stuff in there. As I mentioned, check us out on Patreon. Our supporters get the perks, like I mentioned. You get to vote on the series that we cover on heroin addiction, as well as getting the high-quality stereo version of the podcast early. So if you want to get a head start on people, those usually come out a day or two before the official release, sometimes a few days ahead of that. If I'm really overzealous about something, I'll edit it ahead of time and put it out. So, and of course, we want to hear what perks you'd like. So go ahead and comment on the posts or hit us up on Discord. Let us know. And of course, we want to shout out our patrons. So I will do that now. We've got, at our Reincarnator tier, Moon and Cake Dwarf. At our Merchant tier, we've got Kill Hour. And at our Commoner tier is Arena. So thanks so much to all our patrons. And don't forget to check out our regular podcast, That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. We also have Shonen Jumping the Gun, which is where Kermit and I cover new series that are coming out, mostly new series that are coming out. We read the first chapter and then make wild predictions about their longevity. We've also now got Bakabanashi, which is a series where we just do whatever the hell we want to do. And we might have some other new series starting up here in the next couple months. So make sure you get subscribed so you don't miss that. And of course, if you can't get enough of Ben talking about things that he's reading, you can check out his other podcast, Words About Books. What do you got going on coming up, Ben?
Murder, She Wrote.
Oh, I can't wait for that one.
That's the peak Words About Books.
Yeah. There's been a bunch of stuff you've covered recently that I was not on board for.
You don't like The Giver?
Oh my God. That was, honestly, I didn't know that was like so heavily aimed at, middle schoolers.
Yeah. It's mostly just boring. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, but it's
I also didn't realize it had no point.
I don't know if the English teachers would agree, but that was my take.
All right. Well, thanks again for listening. We hope everybody had a good time, as much of a good time as we did. Now, I have to go. I think I hear the Manwa dog sniffing around. Maybe flush some things. So, as always, I will
beat up my cat. So I'm going to have to beat up my cat. He is going nuts right now. He wants to be part of this, I guess.
Here, this is the key to if the microphone's good.
Ooh. Can it perfectly capture the savory ASMR of an Arnold Palmer?
Hold on just a second. The dog is at the door.
Everybody's pets are causing a problem. I'm trying to figure out what my cat... He's never been this persistent about nothing. I have no idea what he's after. But anywho.
This is rated 8.9 on Bato, by the way.
Hey, we beat him. Or we got exactly what they wanted.